Kyle Shanahan speaks on a ton of things going on with the San Francisco 49ers all offseason, namely Jimmy G, Trey Lance, Deebo Samuel, the big topics on the eve of training camp. Croc and I will get into that, and Jeremy Fowler of ESPN on some insight from inside the building on what Trey Lance has looked like throughout spring practices. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you. Hi, I'm Brian Peacock, NFL analyst, co-host of the Locked On 49ers podcast. Obviously, you're watching it. Also, co-host of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show is what I meant to say. My guy, Eric Crocker, co-host of the Locked On NFL Draft Pod right here on the network. Both of us pulling double duty, obviously. Croc is a Arena Bowl champion, former AFL, NFL cornerback. At BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker is where you can find us on Twitter, showing off the goods there. Woo, look at that bling. If you're watching on YouTube, getting a good look of that SaberCats Arena Bowl championship ring. And the 49ers trying to get a ring of their own, and the march starts Tuesday as everybody reports to training camp, including one James, don't know his middle name, Garoppolo. What is Jimmy's middle name? I know that, and I forgot.
Richard?
James.
I don't know.
Richard, yeah. James Richard Garoppolo.
Is it really?
I think that's
I kind of guessed, but I feel like I've heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, people have said his name enough in like a bunch of different ways, whether it's James, Jimmy. So I thought I heard Richard, but yeah.
Jimmy G, of course, is what everyone refers to him as. And
I feel like I should know a random man's like middle name. And when I say random, I just don't know him at all personally. So
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It feels like we know him, right? I've seen so much Jimmy G over the last 5 years, and he's going to be gone. Croc is the takeaway from the Kyle Shanahan interview with Tim Kawakami of The Athletic, the TK show. It's a good listen. It's the first time, we've gotten to hear Kyle Shanahan candid about all this stuff that's been going on over the course of the offseason. And I guess we'll start with the Jimmy G stuff, because it was fascinating to hear Kyle Shanahan talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, about how he's gone pretty much. So yeah, I haven't talked to Jimmy since the end of the season. That was it. Like, Jimmy's not here. It's Trey Lance's time. We're ready for Trey Lance. We believe in him. Trey needed the 1 year with Jimmy. Now we're ready to go with Trey. And it was like, okay, well, Jimmy G's gone. That's it. And then Kawakami asked him, "Is like, so do you expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be there at training camp?" He's like, "Yeah, well, he'll probably show up and do his physical." And we're like, "Well, wait a second, he's gone, but he's going to come to training camp and take a physical and report." It's just so weird. But the takeaway from me, Croc, and I don't know how you read this, but the takeaway from me was basically Kyle Shanahan saying, obviously, like, look, it's not Jimmy G's team, it's Trey Lance's team, and Trey Lance is going to be the guy. He also said that he didn't expect Jimmy G to really take part in anything over the course of training camp. He said he couldn't really see that happen, although crazier things have happened in the world. Kyle Shanahan always does that thing. He doesn't know if we're all going to be alive next Sunday, right? But it's funny because he has to pass a physical to be cleared so that the 49ers could either release or trade him. That's how I read this. So
do you think he's showing up because, well, he has to show up, he has to take a physical, we'll see where he's at from there, and then he'll just go back to whatever cave he's working out in? Or it's like, hey, he's going to come, take a physical, get cleared, and, oh, by the way, he's going to take part in everything that's going on the field that he's allowed to, at least to this point?
Yeah, and well, there's some contractual stuff too with the CBA, because if he is cleared and he's healthy, he has to be at training camp, because you can't excuse people, right? Like you could in the past, because that's how guys who were holding out, they would get around it because the team wouldn't want to, cause problems. So they would excuse the player who's holding out, but now you get fined if you're not holding out. But they could still, they could say he could be around, but they could say he's injured, but clear him at the same time. I don't know. That just seems like a weird way to go about it. So there's a possibility that he shows up, takes his physical, is cleared, and is instantly released. Like, that's a possibility. Like, by the time everyone wakes up on a Wednesday, Jimmy Garoppolo might be released after he takes his physical on Tuesday. That's one of the possibilities here. Or maybe there's a trade in the works too with some of this. But clearly,
did Kawakami ask the possibility of a release?
No, I didn't hear that in it. No, I don't think he specifically asked him that, and Kyle Shanahan's going to face the rest of the 49ers beat at training camp too. And so there's going to be a ton of follow-ups, I'm sure, to some of these. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions. So it's very interesting that, that Kyle Shanahan was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo past tense, really, and talking about how it's Trey Lance's team. But then he's also like, oh yeah, but he's going to show up and take a physical and report to training camp. But then he said he'd be shocked if he does any work at training camp too. So Jimmy's clearly gone. Now the how and when is really the only question. Is really the big takeaway from that.
I listened to a soundbite, and I will listen to the rest of the episode tonight and have more takes on it tomorrow when Winky joins us. But the soundbite that I heard, he was talking as if Jimmy Garoppolo is his quarterback. Like, it was like everything in that soundbite that I heard, and it was a good 2 minutes long. It was basically getting Trey Lance to the point to where he's prepared for this season. And hey, he doesn't have to take everything on his shoulders. Everything doesn't have to be about Trey Lance. And he compared it to 2019 with Jimmy Garoppolo coming off of an injury. How, hey, Jimmy started off and there was ups and there was downs. And obviously, if you guys remember back 2019 how it started, the team was 8-0, but Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't necessarily playing 8-0 style football, but the defense was so good, the run game was good. And Kyle kind of alluded to the team kind of carrying Jimmy until Jimmy kind of got hot in the middle of the year, and he talked about that as well. And he basically is saying, hey, Trey Lance, we don't need him to be the guy right now. He doesn't have to be the reason the 49ers win for them to be able to win games. And again, the context around all of that was Trey Lance. That's our guy. That's our quarterback. Okay, he's going to be doing this, and he needed that year with Jimmy Garoppolo to be prepared for what's coming right now. It sounded like he has his quarterback.
Yep, I read that too. It's Trey Lance's team, and I think that was a lot of what this offseason was about. Not so much trying to create a team that's outscoring people with their quarterback and their passing game. Clearly, and we'll get to Deebo in a second, but drafting a third round running back, trying to make the special teams better, drafting an edge, a defensive lineman, an edge player in the second round. I think clearly the plan from Kyle Shanahan is running the ball and playing defense and not making his young quarterback have to go out and win games. So if he struggles a little bit, it's okay, because the 49ers, we've seen it in 2021, we've seen it in 2019, had some struggles, and they came out of it okay because of the defense, because of the running game. So that's the plan. We'll see if the offensive line is up to that challenge, because that's the one question I would have. If they're able to run the ball and protect the young quarterback, that would be I think the real big question in the offseason plan was not, and who knows, maybe JC Treader shows up tomorrow to 49ers training camp as well, right? And they draft or they bring in sign another free agent interior offensive lineman just to solidify that thing. But yeah, it's Trey Lance's team, and the plan is, even though it's Trey Lance's team and he's the quarterback, the plan is that he doesn't have to drive the bus, that the bus is already tuned up and ready to go, and he just has to not drive it off the cliff, basically.
Right. And he feels like he's prepared, at the very least, to not drive it off of the cliff. And that's
I think he is. And I think there's a high enough floor, as raw as Trey Lance is. I think there is a high enough floor with him, with his athletic ability and his arm, that if he's just taking the baby steps that most quarterbacks take throughout their careers, going from year one into year two, and even throughout the year, getting those reps, which is another thing Kyle Shanahan talked about, was the reps that Trey Lance needs. That's something he has to get, which is why Jimmy Garoppolo can't be around anymore, because Trey Lance, the last part of his development is playing and getting those reps and playing through some of those things. So more on Trey Lance coming up. A really great quote from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, who was on local San Francisco radio 95.7 The Game, speaking about what he's hearing about Trey Lance in these off-season workouts, and Kyle Shanahan's comments on Deebo Samuel and what he expects from Deebo, if he expects Deebo to sign and be in camp as well. Coming up next, after I let the folks out there know about Dave. Level with me. We've all been in a situation at some point in our lives when we're a little tight on cash. Maybe you can only afford to put a few gallons of gas in your tank, or you got another save the date and are wondering how you're going to afford that wedding gift. That's where Dave can help. Dave is the banking app They can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. And no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's Dave, D-A-V-E. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Okay, Croc. Trey Lance or Deebo? Do you want to do you want to finish the Shanahan stuff, or do you want to go to the Jeremy Fowler report on Trey Lance?
Look, finish the Shanahan stuff. That's the stuff that matters most, because we've been hearing a lot of secondhand conversations surrounding Trey Lance, even the Jeremy Fowler, and we're going to get to that. And obviously, it's a positive for Trey Lance. There was some other stuff with GMs and how they felt or whatnot, but Kyle Shanahan, his opinion is the one that matters the most. So I want to hear a little bit more from Kyle Shanahan.
It was funny hearing Kyle Shanahan talk about the arm fatigue stuff. He was asked the arm fatigue question, and really all of his answers won't shock you when you hear the whole podcast, Croc. And I'm sure you've read some of the quotes, and all of his answers were like, yes, obviously that's what Croc and I have been saying all offseason long on the podcast, but you never just really got it from him. But you always hear these other things coming from anywhere, and this doesn't add up, that doesn't add up. It seems like this. And we would say what basically Kyle Shanahan just said. But I think the funniest thing he said was that he's at home and he gets texts from his high school buddies or, old friends, or his wife will come up and be like, what's this thing I heard about, Deebo, and took the Niners off his social media or whatever. And he's at home and he's thinking, we're not at work right now. We didn't have work today. Deebo wasn't at work today. I wasn't at work today. How could something be happening when nothing is happening? And I thought that was hilarious, because it's there's nothing to be done. Why would we worry about a Deebo contract when it's the off season, right?
He's trying to check out, and it's nobody just lets him chill.
Yeah, the dude can't chill. The dude cannot chill at all. It's so funny. There was the arm fatigue stuff, and that was another one that he was just he wasn't even mad about the reports, really. And you could tell that Kyle Shanahan's not really on social media, so I think it's not the wave, because when you cover the team like we do, Croc, if you're a beat writer or if you're a fan that's always plugged into social media and you're like, okay, what's going on today? What's going on today? There's always a wave of this stuff. There's reports here, reports there. Kyle Shanahan's not really into that, so he's hearing it from other people, sort of third party, but he's not getting the waves of all of this stuff and all these reports. And he wasn't even mad about the arm fatigue stuff. And he was just I don't know. I heard Trey and Brandon Ayuk joking about it, and I didn't know what they were talking about. There's nothing there. It's just quarterbacks, sometimes they throw the ball a lot. Sometimes you have some arm troubles. That wouldn't be a rarity for that to happen, but there was just no worry at all about arm fatigue or Trey Lance. It's just a non-factor. So
there's been conversation about it with other guys, and I think because it's Trey Lance, again, the unknown, I think people kind of take hold and grasp every little detail of what's going on that comes out. I went back to last year watching the Dallas Cowboys on Hard Knocks, and their quarterback got arm fatigue, Dak Prescott. And he was out of practice for a couple games, and they were like, all right, just don't throw football, just relax. And then eventually he came back. And by week 1 of the NFL season, he threw 60 passes against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I mean, it's all right, what are we talking about? I think that is one of those things people make a bigger deal out of. I was throwing the ball to some of the kids that I trained, and I, threw a lot of passes for 2 days straight. And next thing I know, my shoulder is dang, it's a little sore. And I'm okay, is that arm fatigue? Because if I was a quarterback, I could see how it would affect me, being able to practice. And again, I'm not a 22-year-old quarterback who you hope that he could recover a little bit faster, but throwing balls at the amount that he was, and you and I definitely talked about the timeline between not really throwing in-game reps to preparing for the NFL draft and everything that goes into that, getting drafted, going right over to work with a new quarterback coach that you have not worked with at all. And then you continue to do that all the way till you get to the 49ers, and then you're throwing a ton. Remember, rookie minicamp, he was the only quarterback during rookie minicamp. So you're taking all the reps there, and then you continue to prepare because they send you to a quarterback coach where now you got to work on your mechanics again. And then training camp happens and you're throwing the ball a ton. So, I mean, there's a lot there. And if you were to say, hey, during that time, his arm got sore, I guess I could see it. I don't like Kyle Shanahan. I don't think it means that much.
Right. A COVID year leads into a marathon draft process, into a marathon rookie season, NFL season. There's the rookie wall that guys hit all the time. So if he did have some arm fatigue last year, it wouldn't have been even a story. And what's weird is, why would it come up as a story now if the arm fatigue story was from last year anyway? It's just very strange. It's a strange storyline. Kyle Shanahan squashed it. Kyle Shanahan let everybody know that Trey Lance is the guy going forward. Jimmy Garoppolo showing up for his physical. That might just be a record-keeping moment for the 49ers to be able to then trade, say that he's passed a physical. Teams can then maybe work him out, or maybe the 49ers now can release Jimmy Garoppolo if he does show up to camp and pass that physical on Tuesday. But then, and also Kyle saying, don't expect Jimmy G to be on the field doing any kind of workouts whatsoever for the 49ers.
Will he cut him?
I think at this point, yeah. I think it will. I mean, if you don't have a trade, cut him.
I think Kyle Shanahan, and again, I take him for his word. Someone was like, since when did you take Kyle Shanahan, as face value? And it's like, dude, I've always believed everything he says, because it just, my opinion, Kyle Shanahan is a straight shooter, right? If you remember back to Jim Harbaugh was very quirky, but everybody was the best, right? Like anytime you asked him about, he's the best. Alex, he's the best. Like everybody was the best to him.
AJ Jenkins,
that's awesome. I liked how
he's like,
you said,
AJ Jenkins, fantastic football player. High hopes for AJ Jenkins. Traded like a week later.
Yeah, everybody's the best player for him. So you kind of got a little bit more like, I don't know. He's just going to tell you everybody's great, and he might think the opposite. Kyle Shanahan tells you exactly how he feels. I've always felt like that. And I get coach speak, and maybe that clouds when you do have a coach who's really honest. And I feel like sometimes too honest. Like, damn, Kyle, did you have to tell KBR that? Like during your show? I feel like too honest. Well, he's told us how he's felt about everything along the way with the quarterback situation, right? Every step of the way, he's told you, like, yeah, I mean, we tried to trade him. Couldn't trade him because he got hurt, and we'll see if we can trade him. Then they continue to ask questions. Hey, do you expect to see Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, I expect him to be traded. But if he's not traded, then he'll be on the roster, and I don't see us cutting him. He's too good of a quarterback. There's not a lot of good quarterbacks around the league. And we'd be kind of basically saying we'd be kind of stupid to just cut Jimmy Garoppolo. But I expect him to be traded. Well, he's not traded. And if I take him for his word, which is what he said, and again, he was talking in the moment, and a lot of times he kind of back it up with, well, it's down the line. Basically, kind of we'll cross that bridge when we get here. I could potentially see him just flat out cut Jimmy Garoppolo. And then again, them say, this is what's best for him. This is what's best for his situation. Now they have an opportunity to really find the best situation for Jimmy Garoppolo elsewhere, without the whole trade hanging over his head, the money situation. Because that's a whole other thing. How do you trade a guy that's owed $25, $26, $27 million or whatever it is? And then do you eat some of his salary cap to trade him? But then it doesn't make sense to, eat $10 million for a 4th or 5th round pick. I mean, it's a mess of a situation, but I'm curious to see how it all plays out.
Yep. And the 49ers beat's going to be all over him and grilling him with some of those follow-up questions that Kyle Kame didn't get to when they have the camp opening press conference as well, which I believe is happening Tuesday. So we'll have some answers to some of those questions, I think, coming up pretty soon. And I bet I know what his answer will be about. Because look, if they're still trying to trade him, that's one of the lies he might be telling. And he might have been telling that lie before about if they would eventually release Jimmy G, is that because they still want to trade him, so they can't say that they would release him. So I don't think they'll ever say they were going to release him until they actually release him.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
And I'm guessing he'll say the same thing tomorrow about not releasing him, but he'll also say, I can't really tell you on the trades because, his agent and John are working on that behind the scenes.
I think he'll give you one of his answers. Because one thing I've noticed about him, he's very blunt and honest, right? But when he doesn't want to answer something, it's that whole, we don't even know if we'll be alive on Sunday. right? Like he gives you one of those. So when they ask him, will you just outright cut him? I think he's going to give an a-hole type response, and I can't wait to hear that. If he does, then they'll be willing to let him go.
Yep. Okay. That's how we'll know for sure. I agree with you there. That's exactly what it's going to be. Okay. I do want to remind everybody, thanks for making us your first listen, by the way, here on Locked On 49ers. For your second listen, check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily. Check out Locked On NFL Draft with Croc and Ryan Tracy daily here on the network. Everything going on the Locked On NFL channel, YouTube, home of Peacock and Williamson, by the way, on the Locked On NFL channel. So make sure you're checking all of that stuff out. Everything the network has to offer and other sports as well. Your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, Croc, we got to get to this other story about Trey Lance here, and then we'll talk about Deebo Samuel. Jeremy Fowler on 95.7 The Game of ESPN. And Jeremy Fowler's really good, and he's been breaking a lot of stories and seems to be plugged in with the 49ers. Has gotten a lot of stuff right this offseason. So when I see Jeremy Fowler report something, I usually believe it. And he said, hold on, I want to get this quote correct. He said that I was told, quote, if he, Trey Lance, looks like this in camp, the way he's looking right now, talking about the offseason program, then people are going to forget really quickly about Jimmy Garoppolo. So that is from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reporting on really like kind of the opposite of what we're hearing from the national narrative. Oh, I don't know. The team wants Jimmy and the players want Jimmy and Trey Lance arm fatigue. And Jeremy Fowler's like, from what I'm hearing, Trey Lance looks awesome. And if he looks this good in camp and in games, we're going to forget about Jimmy Garoppolo really quickly. So there's that. And that's where there's so much unknown with Trey Lance too, because fans are like worried and they're like, Jimmy, we won a lot of games with Jimmy. Is Trey Lance, could he possibly be a bust? There's a lot of possibilities with Trey Lance, right? And then there's the upside of it all too, because we don't know. He's raw, but he's so talented. We don't know about Trey Lance. Trey Lance could be like a dude. We could be talking in 2 years about, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Trey Lance, man. Who do you like better? I don't know. It could be one of those situations. Trey Lance has that kind of talent, and he's got great mental makeup, which is one of the things I love the most about Trey Lance. And when you hear reports like this, you realize, man, the upside of what Trey Lance can be. That's why they drafted him at number 3 overall when they traded up. That's why he won them over, even though they didn't know who they were going to take when they traded up to number 3. They went with Trey Lance. They went with the guy that played 1 year of FCS ball 2 years before they drafted him, right? Because of everything else that comes along with his ability. And that's the exciting part of it. And that's why there's so much volatility projecting out what the 49ers could be in 2022 and beyond, because you could be kind of struggling a little bit with a young quarterback, first-time starter, going through growing pains, really trying to grind out games with the running game and the defense and keeping things close. And, in a lot of ways, when bad Jimmy shows up, it'll be a lot of games like that, potentially. But if he is good and he is any level above Jimmy Garoppolo good and continues to grow from there, the sky's the limit for how good the 49ers could be. So there's a lot of volatility there. And it really, you kind of dare to dream sometimes when you think about if Trey Lance hits and he is not even just good, but he's great, look out. Like this is going to be a dynastic sort of a team potentially with some of the stars they have on the roster and the coaching staff they have.
I think when you draft a guy, one, when you give up the capital they gave up to go up and get him, it's like, oh, man, you want him to be good, and everybody wants to be cautiously optimistic, because there's the more likely outcome is that he's not good at all, right?
Yeah, or
most quarterbacks that get drafted high,
pretty okay. Like in the end, if like we go through this whole dance and he's just kind of pretty much the same as Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd be like, we had to go through all that just to kind of be the same, which is not bad, but it's not like great, and there's so much area between complete bust, which is a possibility still, and superstar player, which is a possibility still, right?
Right. So, I mean, there is definitely that, but you do have to wonder, like, man, what if he does end up being everything? I'd say my biggest thing is I just don't have those expectations this year. Right. And there are a lot of people, oh man, he's going to be so much better than Jimmy G. And I talked about the tiers thing with the GMs or front office people or whatever. And they had him in tier 4, but they had Jimmy in tier 2/3 or whatever they had him. I think tier 3, but closer to tier 2. And it's like, well, yeah, I could see how someone would think that. I could see how front office people they're looking at like what are guys right now, and at the very least with Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, he's not the greatest football player, but he's not gonna lose you games either, and at least you know that for the most part, right? With Trey Lance, it's like, man, he can lose you games, he can win you games. Like we don't know what the hell, we just know that he's a little raw, and he hasn't played a lot of football. So yeah, let's throw him in tier 4 and just say, hey, they're tripping going with him, and we'd rather play against him than Jimmy Garoppolo. And if I was a defensive coordinator or someone, I would say that too.
Yeah, I'd want to play against a young quarterback who's never seen the stuff I'm about to throw at him before.
Right. I mean, and you would think that that's pretty obvious, right? I would rather play against this guy that hasn't seen anything and still needs room to grow or whatever. Now, the one thing that I think people are kind of missing is you give this guy an offseason, which he's had with Kyle Shanahan, and he's the guy and everything is designed for him. I'd say you're going to get solid QB play. Again, if he plays great, awesome, right? If you get year 2 Lamar Jackson or year 2 Patrick Mahomes, great. Yeah. Those guys were MVPs. But I could see him at the very least being a solid starter. And then we're just going into year 3 talking about, hey, how do we build on what we just saw year 2 where he was solid. The 49ers won 10 games. They went 10-7. You see some of the close games they lost. Oh, man, it's just tough learning lessons. They barely missed the playoffs, or they made the playoffs but got bounced out first round. Like, you could see some of those things happen, and then it's going to be, how does he grow from there? And then you hope that he takes that big year 3 jump.
Yep. And the last bit from the Shanahan conversation with Tim Kawakami on the TK show was about Deebo Samuel. And it's pretty much the same as what Shanahan said earlier this offseason when he was asked about the Deebo stuff, was that he's not worried about it. He expects Deebo to be a Niner, be in camp and play ball, but he's also said he understands the business side of things. He said he would never in a million years imagine he has to worry or talk Deebo Samuel into having to do something. Like, he's just a warrior out there on the field. And so he's not worried about it. He expects Deebo to be there at some point, but he also said he understands the business side of it, and those things have to work themselves out. But it sounds like he was pretty optimistic, as he has been throughout the offseason when asked about Deebo Samuel. So good signs there. And I think, the writing's on the wall. I think, if Deebo showed up to minicamp, probably doesn't want to get fined and lose money if he's trying to gain more money, right? So maybe a hold-in situation. We'll see what it looks like, but I'd be shocked if Deebo Samuel's not reporting to camp on Tuesday.
And some of these things come down to the agent, right? Like, what is the agent telling Deebo Samuel to do? What's he telling Deebo Samuel to say, right? Like, because the agent has to get paid too. He gets his percentage as well. You want things to go your client's way, and you want to make sure that he's set for life, right? Over the 49ers, like, dude, we don't care about the 49ers. I want to make sure that my client is good to go. So I'm curious to see what Deebo Samuel does, but I do like the fact that Kyle Shanahan kind of took a little pressure off of Deebo by saying, hey, if he's there, he's probably not going to touch the field. We're going to have him just kind of get ready, work up, work himself into shape, all those good things. And it made it to where if he is doing a hold-in, I don't think it'd be much of a distraction.
Croc earlier mentioned the tiers. That was the Mike Sando tiers from the Athletic. And every year, Mike Sando writes an article for the Athletic where he interviews league executives and coaches. And he used to do this when he was at ESPN. And actually, Jeremy Fowler is the one that started kind of doing that. We saw a list recently from ESPN of Jeremy Fowler, a little different, where they ranked the top 10 players at each position in the NFL. And it was, made a lot of waves that Lamar Jackson wasn't very high on that list. This is a similar idea, but it's a little bit different. And he asked the GMs to tier out the quarterbacks and what tier they would put the quarterbacks in. Croc and I, along with Nicholas Winkler, tomorrow on a Winky Wednesday episode, we'll get into that, all the latest going on with the 49ers. It is reporting day, so we'll have all of that news as well, all the latest going on with 49ers training camp, as we will continue to do every day here on Locked On 49ers. Thanks for making us your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.